When you hear the term classic motorcycle, you might think of pivotal models from a bygone era. You might think of bikes like the Honda CB750 or even the Ducati 916. Each motorcycle that is drastically different in most aspects, but similar in the way that they excelled beyond the expectations of riders and manufacturers of the time, solidifying their rightful place in the annals of motorcycle history. Or you might think of modern classics, which are contemporary motorcycles with modern components and manufacturing standards that use styling cues to harken back to a different time. Bikes like the Triumph Bonneville or the Royal Enfield Interceptor fit the modern classic moniker to a T. But there is an additional way to think about modern classic motorcycles. These are bikes from relatively recent history that have been so distinct and impactful that they've already begun to earn classic status very shortly or even prior to their discontinuation. Because not every classic bike needs to look like it's from the 1960s. I mean, it's 2024. The 90s were 30 years ago. I think it's time the modern classic title has earned a new meaning. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to explore modern classic motorcycles that you may not have even considered to be classics yet. Today's video is sponsored by our friends at Cardo. Let's get into it. A motorcycle that very plainly represents the sector of the modern classic category is the Yamaha R6. Produced from 1999 until 2020, the R6 is one of the most winning 600 class sport bikes ever built and has since been lauded by street squids and track day junkies alike. The 599cc 4-cylinder engine making around 120 horsepower all the way up at a tachometer indicated 17,500 RPM, which, yes, controversial because it didn't quite make all those revs. When it was first released in 1999, it was the first 600cc sport bike to make over 100 horsepower stock. That power increased as production went on, peaking for the 2008 and 2009 model year with 127 horsepower. And if you know, then you know that's the vintage of R6 to get. The screaming top-end rush that the R6 is known for is what makes it such an addicting machine to ride. Paired with a lightweight and rigid chassis, the R6 is incredibly nimble and maneuverable. In addition to its award-winning power output, the R6 has several first industry milestones like its early implementation of a fly-by-wire throttle system. When the R6 was discontinued in 2020 due to its failure to meet Euro 5 emissions, it was immediately granted classic status. Used models began being sold for absurdly high prices as fast boys were forced to confront the imminent supersport extinction. The R6 is still sold in a non-street legal track-only variant and is ridden by various riders in World Supersport. But the end of the road-worthy production models, followed by the influx of parallel twin-powered middleweight bikes like the R7, has been a huge paradigm shift for the motorcycle industry. I think few will disagree in saying that Yamaha R6 is anything but a classic. The Ducati Monster has been in production since 1993, and in those 30 years it has been sold in practically dozens of different iterations and evolutions that we will not get into because I have mercy for my editor. But despite the variance in production models, even though the Monster is still a bike that is in production, it is really about as classic as a motorcycle can get. Not only did the Monster essentially create the framework for the modern naked motorcycle, it has also been credited for saving Ducati as a company. The Monster at one point accounted for over 2/3 of the company's production output. The Monster began as a styling exercise designed to tap into the young outlaw roadster market. They wanted to build a bike with strong Ducati heritage that was comfortable to ride and allowed for a high degree of customizability, a characteristic that had become quite attractive to Harley-Davidson riders. The initial model was by most considerations a parts bin special. It used the trellis frame from the 851 Superbike, a 90-degree L twin from the 900 Supersport, and the front fork for the 750 Supersport. The Monster ebbed and flowed over the years. They built small displacement models for certain markets and fully equipped models built around superbike engines with top-of-the-line suspension and braking components. They had air-cooled motors, liquid-cooled motors, and limited edition models, but each Monster was distinctly a monster and remains so to this day. And in many ways, this bike has been the most approachable and ubiquitous Ducati for many riders. And I personally think that the air-cooled trellis-framed versions and the sort of 850 package is the one to get. As I mentioned, it was the front runner for the naked bike, a segment which has become a diverse and popular category of motorcycle. Ducati might still be making the Monster, but it has long earned the title of a classic bike. Now, whether you're riding on a limited edition Ducati Monster or a monstrous piece of junk you bought off Facebook, you can elevate your riding experience with one simple trick. by getting yourself set up with a Cardo communicator. Here at Yamanoob, we've worked with Cardo in varying capacities over many years, and there's always a Cardo on my helmet. Their Bluetooth communicator systems allow you to chat with other riders, stream media from your phone, or listen to turn-by-turn directions. The Cardo PackTalk Edge is their premier unit that allows you to connect up to 15 other riders in just seconds, seamlessly connecting with any other communicator brand on the market. The PackTalk is powered by JBL audio to ensure your sound is crystal clear and loud in your helmet. With the air mount system, you can instantly remove the magnetic unit from your helmet and take it with you for safekeeping. Cardo truly makes the best motorcycle comm systems out there, and they are the OGs. They started the category, and they have models for all different budgets. And because you're a loyal Yamanoob viewer, Cardo is giving you 10% off if you use the code YNCardo. So hit the link down below in the description box and use the code YNCardo to get 10% off of any unit from Cardo. Supporting our channel sponsors does a lot to keep bringing you awesome motorcycle content, so help us help you get the comm system you deserve. Thanks so much for the support, Cardo. Now let's get back to the video. Honda is arguably responsible for popularizing the inline 4-cylinder engine when they released the CB750 in 1969. This engine configuration became the gold standard for Japanese bikes for essentially the next 40 years. In the late 70s, Honda attempted to do the same thing with the V4 engine. With the narrower width and a perfect primary balance, a 90-degree V-twin offered advantages to a traditional inline 4 design. We made a whole video about V4 engines, so if you're curious, go and check that out. Despite the V4 being a popular superbike engine embraced by Ducati and Aprilia, Honda was the first company to bring the V4 engine into the popular nomenclature. As an early adopter, they were met with manufacturing difficulties, most notably the result of a poorly designed camshaft. While fearing the possibly losing their reputation for bulletproof reliability, Honda reintroduced the V4 and the VFR 750 in the mid-80s. These engines were refined using gear-driven cams and since reaffirmed Honda's reputation for build quality. The VFR 750 ultimately became the VFR 800, also known as the Interceptor, in 1998 and has been since considered one of the most innovative and practical sport bikes ever made by Honda. Making a little over 100 horsepower and having relaxed ergonomics, the VFR 800 was an incredibly agreeable sport bike for street use with an awesome sound. The Interceptor had many characteristics that made it a unique motorcycle, such as a single-sided swing arm, underseat exhaust, combined braking system, and ultimately became equipped with VTEC. This thing is so sick. The VFR was sold globally until 2021, but was phased out of the US way back in 2009. Based on most metrics, in my opinion, the VFR is a certified classic. In 2006, Triumph did the unthinkable. They took their Daytona namesake, a name that was most recently associated with genuinely mid-street-oriented sport bikes, and attached it to a brand new silky smooth, agile 3-cylinder sport bike that would rival many of the Japanese middleweight bikes on the market. Over the next 10 years, the Daytona only got more powerful and more well-equipped. It's a classic bike because it's just so special. It's so unique in its riding style and character, and the Daytona ain't so hard on the eyes either. I really think the Gen 1 Daytona is the absolute classic bike we're talking about today. Undertail exhaust, super small, svelte looks and shape. That front end just looks so pointy and small. It is just right in so many ways. And for me personally, the 2012 Gen 1 Daytona 675R might be the perfect sport bike ever made. That's just my opinion. Triumph has made and still currently makes the Street Triple, which has been equally monumental in its impact on the industry since 2007. The Street Triple is a middleweight naked bike that was originally based off the 675cc Triple for the Triumph Daytona. Now the updated 765cc engine for the Street Triple is the engine platform for all Moto2 race bikes, further cementing itself as a middleweight fixture. But the previous generations are equally appreciated for what they were. The Street Triple really came into its own after the 2013 model year as improvements were made to the frame, subframe, exhaust, wheels, and suspension that made the bike lighter and more agile. This bike was upgraded further in 2018 when it received the larger aforementioned 765cc engine that's now used in Moto2. Despite its current prevalence and considered to be respected prowess of the machine, the Triumph Street Triple is likely considered a classic for years to come. But again, in my opinion, Gen 1 2012 675R, that is the one to get, the true classic. And again, now that we have the Daytona 660, it's kind of only further cemented the 675 status among the classic greats. Motorcycle can also quickly become a classic due to its cultural prevalence and record-breaking accolades, and that is exactly why the BMW R1150 GS has made the list today. Yes, a GS made the list to BMW. Yeah, but we had to talk about it. Come on. The GS series from BMW encompasses their long-running line of adventure-style motorcycles, but the R1150 GS, a model that's now been eclipsed multiple times over by newer and more advanced models, retains its position as a classic thanks in parts to its use in Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman's motorcycle adventure series, The Long Way Round. And as a side note, I saw a BMW R1300 GS at the dealership the other day. Thing looks really good in person. I kind of want to take one for a ride. The series proved to be the ultimate commercial for BMW as they rode these machines 19,000 miles around the world, going eastward from London all the way to New York City. As if one globe-crossing adventure wasn't good enough press for this bike, husband and wife overlanding team Kevin and Julia Sanders hold 2 world records that were completed on BMW R1150 GSs. The records include circumnavigating the world in just 19 and a half days. Man, that is making some time. And traversing the Pan American Highway from Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, all the way south to Tierra del Fuego, Argentina in 35 days, completing it 12 days faster than the previous record. The R1150 GS and its varying feats that were accomplished atop of them were monumental in the growing popularity of adventure-style riding. The bikes in and of themselves are examples of raw simplicity too, before they became equipped with tens of thousands of dollars in optional farkles and add-ons that you find in modern GSs. They made just 85 horsepower from the air and oil-cooled Boxer Twin, utilized a shaft final drive, and the adventure models even had a knock sensor that allowed for the use of 87-octane gasoline. The BMW GS is a fixture of the adventure bike segment, and the 1150 GS is arguably the bike that carried the torch and allowed the subsequent models to thrive the way they did. Part of Suzuki's business plan must include manufacturing the same bike for so long. It is considered a classic while also still in production, and I think that's what's happening with the GSX-R 750. This bike has been in production since 1985, and nearly 40 years later, you can still buy one brand new in the 2024 model year. Has it been updated in the last 10, 15 years? No. Does it need to be? No. While companies like Yamaha are doing away with their 4-cylinder sport bikes, Suzuki still has one of the most obscure sport bikes on their offering list. The GSX-R 750 has been lauded by squids for being an ideal middle ground between a 600 and a 1000. Making 150 horsepower and weighing just 420 pounds, the increased displacement over a 600 allows it for more accessible torque, but it isn't as bonkers as a 1000. The GSX-R is really just an odd duck when you think about it, but man, it's kind of a classic at this point. Other manufacturers haven't made 750 class sport bikes in over 20 years, and Suzuki still does, for now. Because likely their new GSX 8S and 8R plan to put many of their 4-cylinder sport bikes out to pasture. And the last motorcycle we need to talk about today is the Kawasaki H2 and ZH2. Not only are these motorcycles physical representations of a sick and twisted mechanical wet dream, how are we to know that they won't be gone for good sooner or later? I don't know what the specifics of Kawasaki's financial department are, but I can't imagine these bikes are cheap to make or that they sell in high volumes. These 4-cylinder factory supercharged machines, no matter how otherworldly and intoxicating they may be, seem very much the product of an exercise with the caveat of, let's just see if we can. Because according to popular science, not enough people are buying normal 4-cylinder super sports for manufacturers to justify updating them to meet tightening emissions regulations. Race replica sport bikes have been deemed too impractical and too expensive for most motorcycle buyers, so a $30,000 supercharged 4-cylinder sport bike is even more expensive and less practical. And believe me, I love the H2 and ZH2. I've owned both and am considering getting another ZH2 as like a long-term tester. We have to see if things shake out. But the power, the sheer magnitude of yeet energy, the supercharger flutter, Jesus Christ, it fills my soul to the brim with monster energy. They are truly so freaking cool, and there's nothing like them. But the pragmatist in me recognizes that the novelty and allure of the H2 and ZH2 may not be long for this world as motorcycle industries continue to devolve into cheap Chinese bikes and EVs. And as a result, both bikes are already in the ranks of certified classics that will live in infamy in the garages of a few privileged Kyles who have the foresight to hold on to a good thing when they've got it. Seriously, I think both of those are going to be future classics, no doubt. Which of these bikes of recent history do you consider to be classics? Let me know down below. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks again to Cardo for supporting today's video. I will see you all later. Fact: a snail can sleep for 3 years. Goodbye. You've made it to the end of another Yammy Noob video. Aren't you just a special little cookie? Aren't you just something so great? Aren't you just, look at you, you're just so freaking cute. Why don't you go ahead and click on the next video? Why don't you go ahead, listen, hey,
Hey, I'm just kidding around. Hey, listen to me. Click on the video.